Welcome to LIVEDAF, your online Daf Yomi Shiur.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Eruvin of Zayin, on Daf Vav base towards the bottom. The Gemara related to us a story that happened in the town of Naharda, where they had a Mavoi Okum, this bent Mavoi, and they applied the Chumrah of Rav and the Chumrah of Shmuel. So you know there are two types of Mavoi. Mavoi Sasam, which is the enclosed Mavoi, so it's encircled on three sides with mechitzes, and really the fourth side is open Shus Rabim, in which case merely a lechi v'kira placed at that entranceway to Shus Rabim is sufficient. We have the Mavoi Mefulash, which is the open-ended alleyway, for instance running from one street to the other, so you have two streets, and you have an alleyway running from one street to the other, from one Shus Rabim to the other. That's called a Mavoi Mefulash, an open-ended alleyway, and you cannot suffice with merely a lechi v'kira. You must enclose that alleyway because it's exposed on both sides to Shus Rabim. So you must apply another tikkun. According to Rav, you place a Tzuras HaPesach on either side, which is that physical surah of the structure, a doorway structure, a beam on one side, a beam on the other, and something running across the top. So that Tzuras HaPesach works like a mechitza. It's as though it's enclosing that area, in which case the Mavoi is now encircled from three sides. It's considered a Mavoi Sasam, and therefore Lecha V'Kira is now sufficient. According to Shmuel, Tzuras HaPesach is not enough. You have to place a door on one of the ends, which will actually potentially shut out the traffic of the pedestrians who are using this alleyway as a walkthrough, as an access route from one Shus Rabim to the other. Now we have a Mavoi Okum, which is a bent Mavoi. What is the halacha of a Mavoi Okum? Let's take a look at the Rashi, the illustration here. So you'll see the Shus Rabim running on top, and you have the alleyway which begins on one side. It comes from the Shus Rabim, makes two sharp turns, and comes back around at 180 degrees back to Shus Rabim, and it ends in Shus Rabim. So technically, it's coming from Shus Rabim and ending in Shus Rabim, which appears like a Mavoi Mefulash, because it begins and ends in Shus Rabim, but it's an indirect route. You need to go through those very tight bends to get around back to Shus Rabim. So we have machlokes. How do we treat this? According to Rav, this is regarded as a Mavoi Mefulash, and a lechi is not sufficient. You must add a Tzuras HaPesach. According to Shmuel, since this route is very indirect, this is not regarded as a Mavoi Mefulash, and therefore merely a lechi at the entranceway to the Mavoi is sufficient. Now in Naharda, they had this type of Mavoi Okum, and they applied all the stringencies. They applied the shita of Rav, who regards this as a Mavoi Mefulash, and therefore a lechi is not sufficient. But then they transferred over to Shmuel's Chumrah, and they required not only Tzuras HaPesach, but rather actually a door. So they applied both Chumras of Rav and of Shmuel. The problem is that Shmuel doesn't regard this as a Mavoi Mefulash. He says a Mavoi Okum is considered to be closed off. It's considered to be an enclosed Mavoi, since the access through the alleyway is very indirect. So how can they do that? How can they take the Chumrah of Rav and regard it as a Mefulash, and the Chumrah of Shmuel and add doors? One is not meant to do that. It says the Gemara of Tanya, 6 lines from the bottom. We learned in the Brayso. Generally, the halacha follows Beis Hillel. That is the prevailing authority. If one chooses, if one wishes, he can do like Beis Shammai. If he chooses, he can do like Beis Hillel. However, if he chooses the kula of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, Rasha, he's not meant to do that. He's not meant to pick and choose the leniencies of all opinions. What if he chooses the chumras of both? If he chooses the stringencies of Beis Shammai and the stringencies of Beis Hillel, he's a fool. All of Akasav, on him, the pasuk says, Haksil b'chayshach, the foolish man walks in darkness. Rather, you have to be consistent. Follow one shita all the way through. If you're following Beis Shammai, follow straight through in accordance with their kulas and chumras. If you choose to follow Beis Hillel, follow all the way through, whether it's kula or chumrah. But one is not meant to go ahead and take the chumrah of one shita, for instance, of Rav, and the chumrah of Shmuel, and combine it into one. So before we get to the teretz regarding the people of Naharda, the Gemara is going to analyze the wording of the Brayso, which seems to have a kasha within it. How go for kasha? This seems to be an inherent steer, inherent contradiction. Amris lo ilom halach Beis Hillel. Begin by saying the halacha follows like Beis Hillel. So apparently that's how one is meant to do. And then you proceed and say, if one wishes, he can follow Beis Shammai. Which way is one meant to follow? Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel? Has more like kasha. It's not difficult. The teretz depends at what point in history you're speaking about. Kan koidem baskal, kan la'achar baskal. So baskal, his heavenly voice, called out and instructed us and said halacha ki Beis Hillel. So since that baskal came out, we went to follow Beis Hillel exclusively. So when the Brisa begins and says Lo'olam Alach Beis Hillel, we're speaking after the baskal emerged. However, when the Brisa says one can choose which route he would like to follow, that's koidem baskal, before the instruction of the baskal. Same another teretz, baskal. Both parts of the Brisa are referencing the point in history, which was post baskal, and we are meant to follow Beis Hillel. However, this shita didn't subscribe to the baskal. Rabbi Shoi, this part of the Brisa which says one can choose Beis Shammai, is Rabbi Shua's shita, the loy mashkech baskal. He doesn't pay heed to a baskal. He says, loy bashamayim, Torah is not in heaven. Torah is given to us to be clarified and concluded based on our own humanly limited abilities. We're not meant to listen to heavenly voices when it comes to Torah. Same another teretz. This is what the Brisa is saying. The Brisa is not actually referring to specifically Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Certainly when it comes to that machlekes, we want to follow Beis Hillel, who's the final authority. The Brisa is merely citing as an example. What is an example of a machlekes between Tanoim and Amoraim that we find in Shas? An example is Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. This is what the Brisa is saying. Straight Tanoi, Utrei Amorai, the pligi adadi. Whenever we'll find two Tanoim or two Amoraim that have a machlekes, Kein machlekes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, just like the machlekes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, Lo la'avid kikuli demar, kikuli demar. So one finds a machlekes, one is not meant to adopt the kula of one shita and then go ahead and adopt the kula of the other shita. Nor is he meant to adopt and conduct himself in accordance with the chumrah of one shita and the chumrah of the other shita. So don't pick and choose, be consistent. Either follow this mar, this shita, follow along his kulas and his chumrah, or follow the other shita, all the way through his kula and his chumrah. Don't pick the kula of one shita and the kula of the other, or the chumrah of one and the chumrah of the other. So again, we have three terutzim on the kasha, on the apparent stira in the wording of the Brisa. So number one depends if it was before or after the baskal. After the baskal, certainly we follow Beis Hillel. The second teretz was Rabbi Shua doesn't hold of the baskal, and his view is reflected in those words of the Brisa that we can choose Beis Shammai as well. And finally, the Gemara says Beis Shammai Beis Hillel is merely used as an example for your standard, typical machlekes. But in reality, when it comes to that specific machlekes, meant to follow Beis Hillel, it's merely being used as an example of machlekes, a general machlekes, where the Brisa will tell us we're meant to follow one shita consistently. Okay, now getting back to the story of Nahardoa, how? If so, how did they choose both chumras? They took a look at their maveh and they said, well, we'll regard it as a maveh mafulish in accordance with Shitas Rav. And therefore, a lechem v'kira is not sufficient. We need an additional tikkun to this maveh. But then they go ahead and they adopt Shmuel's approach and they add the door. Whereas Rav merely requires a Turas HaPesach. Mikol Makam Kasha. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Actually, there's no machlekes. There's no contradiction. Kulei ki Rav Avdua. They were following Rav completely. The Amar of Huna Rav. Halacha ve'imoyin came. The halacha that a Turas HaPesach suffices for a mavei mafulish. Indeed, that is the halacha. That's accepted halacha. But ve'in moyin came. We don't go ahead and teach it. We don't publicize it to the general public. Perhaps there's a concern. It might lead to confusion and laxity in the observance of the mavei, of the erev. So the point is, we want to be machmer for the general public. And therefore, they certainly followed Rav entirely. Number one, they classified it as a mavei foolish, and then they affixed the doors in accordance with Rav, who holds that for the general public, that's how we're meant to teach. The Rav Ada bar Ava Amar Rav. However, according to Rav Ada bar Ava, who said the name of Rav, the Amar, who said halacha morinke, that halacha the Turas HaPesach is enough, and we actually publicize this, and that's how we're meant to conduct ourselves. Michael and If so, how do we explain the conduct of the Bnei Narda, which was incompatible with Rav or Shmuel? Amar Shezvi, this entire kasha that we asked on the Bnei Rava can be answered very simply. The point of not combining two chumras of two shitas, that's only when they're based on the same precept. They're based on one concept. So you have two chumras which seem to contradict each other, that we can't do. But if the two chumras are unrelated, one is regarding classifying the mavi. Is it a mafulish or a sasam? We'll follow Rav, we'll consider it like a mafulish. The other issue is regarding what specific tikkun, adjustment are we meant to apply to this mavi mafulish. If it is indeed a mavi mafulish, that's an entirely different topic. And in that we can follow Shmuel and apply it always. So the two things here are totally unrelated, not contradictory. The problem with combining two chumras of two shitas, that's only if the two machlekes are based on the same principle. So you can't contradict yourself. You can't say, well, when it comes to this context, I'm going to follow this shita and be machmer. When it comes to the other topic, which is really based on the same concept and principle, I'm going to follow the other shita l'chumra. That's a self-contradiction. But if the two things are unrelated, unconnected, why not pick and choose both chumras? Amrav Shezvi, Kilei Avdina on the chumra de Beitrei. When is it a concern with adopting the chumras of two shitas? When they are contradictory. Like the example of the shiddur, which is the spine, the gulgoyles is a skull. So these two items can impart tuma not only through mago masa, through direct touching, or lifting, even through oil. So if there's a spine or a skull of a mace under the same roof as a person who's tar, it becomes tummy. Now, that's only if these things are intact. But if they're missing a portion of themselves and they're considered to be no longer intact, they lose their status and don't have the ability to be metame be'oil. Now, how much needs to be missing? This is not as we learned in the Mishnah. Ha'shidr v'agalgoyles shechasru. So they're missing. V'kama chisarn b'shedra. What is considered to be a chisarn, a significant loss of the shedra, for it to lose its status and no longer to be considered intact and is no longer metame? How many vertebrae? B'shami omer shtei chulios. It needs to be missing two chulios, two vertebrae. So if it's only missing one, it's still metame. So b'shami is being machmer when it comes to the tumah of the shedra. Only if it's missing two chulios is it no longer considered intact. But if it's only missing one, it still retains its status and it's metame. B'sil oimrim chulya achas. As long as it's missing one chulya, it's no longer considered intact and is not metame. So when it comes to tumah, Beishama is being machmer, and Beisil is being maker. Ubegulgoyles, how much is missing from the gulgoyles, from the skull? Beishama omrim kumlay magdeach, size of a drill. Ubesiloimim kadeshi notel menachai v'yomos. So Beishama speak about the size of a drill hole, and Beisil will say how much needs to be missing. If you would remove this amount from a person who's living, he would no longer be able to survive with this type of skull. So that's the shiur that needs to be missing from a skull for it to be considered no longer intact and no longer be metame. So this is in the context of tumah. Now the same halacha has another application regarding treifa. The same halacha applies to treifa. So you have an animal who has a shedder who's missing a chulya. According to Beis Shammai, it's still considered a kosher animal as long as it's not missing two vertebrae. So if it's only missing one chulya, it's an animal which is kosher, it's not a treifa. Whereas according to Beis Hillel, as soon as this shedder is missing only one chulya, it's no longer intact. This animal is considered a treifa, which means an animal which has this serious internal deficiency, and it is not mutter to be eaten. So here we have a case, an example, where one halacha can have two applications. And we have a machlokes between Yesham and Beis Hillel. So for instance, we have a shedder which is missing merely one chulya, one vertebrae. So when it comes to tumah, Yesham is machmer. They say it's still metame. When it comes to treifa, they say it's not a treifa yet, because it's still considered intact. So what if a person approaches it in a contradictory manner? He says, look, I'm going to be machmer, like Beis Shammai when it comes to tumah. If it's only missing a chulya, I'll say it's still tummy like Beis Shammai. When it comes to treifa, I'll say it's a treif already because it loses its status. Like Beis Hillel, it's no longer considered intact. It's a treif. This is considered to be a stira because both topics, both contexts, are based on the same principle. Is it intact or is it no longer intact? You can't contradict yourself. You can't say when it comes to Tumah, it is intact. When it comes to Treifa, it's not intact. So this is an example where a person cannot adopt two chumras because they contradict each other. Continues the Gemara, but in the case where the two things are unrelated, for instance, in the case of the Mavi. So when it comes to classifying the Mavi, we'll follow Rav. We consider this to be an open-ended Mavi because it serves as a walkthrough from one Rosh Hashanah to the other. That's one topic. Now, what needs to be done to a Mavi Mefulish? That's an entirely different topic. When it comes to that, we can follow Shmuel. We add a door instead of a doorway. So these two things are unrelated, and therefore, it was okay that they conduct themselves according to both chumras. Says the Gemara, is that the case when the two things are soiser each other? We're not meant to follow. We're not meant to adopt two incompatible chumras. Maser Misharsha, he had a kasha from a Bryce. Maser Rabbi Kiva, this was a story to Rabbi Kiva Shalikat Esrik Be'echad Shvat. So he picked the fruit of an esrik tree on the first day of Shvat. Now this is regarding Trumas HaMaisos. We know that every year in the Shemitah cycle has a different type of halacha of Trumas HaMaisos. For instance, on the first and second year of the Shemitah cycle, so we're meant to remove Ma'aser Rishon and Ma'aser Sheni. When it comes to the third year, things change. Instead of Ma'aser Sheni, we separate Ma'aser Ani. The fourth and the fifth year is Ma'aser Rishon and Ma'aser Sheni, and the sixth year is again Ma'aser Ani. So there's a switchover between the second and third year with regards to Ma'asers. Now, when does that switchover take place? What point in the year? Not on the Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei. It has a special Rosh Hashanah called Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan, which is according to Beis Shammai, the first day of Shvat. According to Beis Hillel, the 15th day of Shvat, Tu B'Shvat. So what happened was Rabbi Kiva picked the esrog tree on the first day of Shvat. This was the transition Shvat between second and third year, for instance. Second and third year of the Shemitah cycle. And the Gemara says, the Brisa says, V'nog by Beis Yisurin. And he applied two halachos of Meiser, meaning he separated the Meiser as though it would be the second year, and also as though it has already been the third year. Echad Kedivi Beis Shammai, because this was on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, where according to Beis Shammai it's already the third year of the Shemitah cycle. So when it comes to, so he followed Beis Shammai, Echad Kedivi Beis Shammai, and he treated it like the third year of the Shemitah cycle, Echad Kedivi Beis Hillel. He also separated the Meiser in accordance with Beis Hillel as though it's merely the second year of the Shemitah cycle, because it's still before Rosh Hashanah, which is merely on the 15th day of Shvat. How could he do that? Either it's the second year or the third year. This approach seems to be incompatible with it. It's a stirum in obey. How can he do both chumras which are incompatible? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Kiva didn't have any intention of following Beis Shammai Shita. He certainly was following Beis Hillel Shita, who hold that, according to our version, hold that the Rosh Hashanah is on the 15th day of Shvat. Rabbi Kiva had an uncertainty, he had a suffix as to the Shita of Beis Hillel. Rabbi Kiva Gemarius topically, he was uncertain regarding the halacha that he learned. He wasn't sure what is the exact date of the Rosh Hashanah according to Beis Hillel. V'lo yoda I Beis Hillel b'chad b'Shvat Omer, whether Beis Hillel maintained that Rosh Hashanah begins on the first day of Shvat, in which case it is now already the third day of the Shemitah cycle, or whether they hold that the Rosh Hashanah is on the 50th day of Shvat, in which case now where it's still, when it's only the first day of Shvat, it's still the second day of Shemitah. Therefore he went l'chumrah. V'avad hacha l'chumrah, v'hacha l'chumrah. Therefore he covered all bases, both sides of the coin. He treated it like the second day of Shemitah, just in case the Rosh Hashanah begins on the 15th day of Shvat, and treated it like the third day of Shemitah, just in case Rosh Hashanah begins on the first day of Shvat. So the point here wasn't that he was being machmer, two chumras which are contradictory, rather, it was due to an uncertainty as to the exact date of the Rosh Hashanah. So in summary, the Gemara tells us, one is not meant to adopt chumras, which are soiser each other, which are incompatible. But if the two chumras are are fully compatible, unrelated to each other, such as in the case of the Mavi Akav Narda, then there's no concern whatsoever. Continues the Gemara. Yosef Rav Yosef Kamei Rav Huna. Rav Yosef was sitting before Rav Huna. V'Yosef V'Kaman, he's sitting and saying as follows. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav. So he's quoting Rav Yehuda, the name of Rav. We discussed a Mavi Mefulash, which is this alleyway which runs from one Rosh Hashanah to the other. It serves as perhaps as a walkway for the pedestrians which are accessing the alleyway to get to the other Rosh Hashanah. That's a Mavi Mefulash, in which case a Lechav Ikar is not sufficient. You need to enclose that alleyway. It should be mukaf on three sides, in which case it turns into a Mavi Sasam, and then merely a Lechav Ikar is sufficient. So we had a machlokes. How exactly do we deal with a Mavi Mefulash? We had a Bryce on Navav Amadal. The Tanakama told us, Eitzuras HaPesach, the formation of a doorway is enough to be placed on either side of this alleyway, because it encloses that alleyway, makes it into an enclosed area, turns it into a Mavi Sasam, and then you simply place a Lechav Ikar on the other side. According to Chananya, who quoted Beis Hillel, he needs to place a door, an actual door, on one side of this alleyway. It would seem that Beis Hillel require the traffic, the actual pedestrian traffic, to be locked out, at least theoretically, potentially, out of this alleyway in order for it to be considered a truly enclosed alleyway. As we said yesterday, we need a door, but the door doesn't actually need to be kept shut. It needs to have potential restrictive powers. Says the Gemara. So this was in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Machlokes, this whole discussion of what is required by Mavi Mefulash, that's only when it's a true Mavi Mefulash, which is running from one Rosh Hashanah to the other. Machlokes is Srati Mikan. Srati Mikan. Srati is a main street, a thoroughfare. So on either side of the alleyway exists a Sratya, in which case the alleyway is stretching from one Rosh Hashanah to the other. That's a Mavi Mefulash. And we require more than just a Lechav Ikar. Uplatya Mikan, or if there's a Platya, which is a plaza, a public plaza which is considered Rosh Hashanah, on either side of the alleyway. Avol Sratya Mikan, Ubika Mikan. What if you have a Sratya on one side, which is Rosh Hashanah, but on the other side there's no Rosh Hashanah, it's merely a Bika, a valley with fields. It's merely a karmelis. It's an unfenced area, but it's not Rosh Hashanah. It's not a publicly used area. So in which case the alleyway here is not really serving as a public access route. It's not exposed on both sides of Rosh Hashanah. Or Bika Mikan or Bika Mikan. If there's a Bika, a karmelis on both sides of the alleyway, in which case the alleyway is not exposed to Rosh Hashanah, it's not serving the Rosh Hashanah. So in both cases, it's not really serving as a walkthrough for the Rosh Hashanah. Because even when there's a Sratya on one side and a Bika on the other, it's not really serving much for the pedestrian traffic, because they're not going to walk through this alleyway to get to where? To get to the fields? So it's not really serving traffic. So in both cases, we don't consider this as a Mavi Mefulash. To the extent that Beis Hillel will require a door, all agree that a Tzuras Pesach is enough. In this case, you don't need a door, because the door was meant to restrict traffic, at least potentially, to have that power to shut out the Rabbim who are walking through this alleyway. But in this case, where the Rabbim are not walking through, there's nowhere to go. So all you need is a Tzuras Pesach erected on either side of this alleyway, which encloses it, because Tzuras Pesach has a din of a machitza. So this makes it into a Mavi Sasam. So it's surrounded on three sides with a partition, and then you place a Lechav Ikar on the other side. So Oiseh Tzuras Pesach Mikan, Lechav Ikar Mikan. Let's take a look at Rashi inside, 16 lines from the bottom. Machlokes the Mavois HaMefuloshin. The machlokes regarding the open-ended Mavois between Tanakam and Chananya, as to the exact tikkun that is needed, whether it's Tzuras Pesach or a door, that only applies to an alleyway which is stretching from one Rosh Hashanah to the other. Sratya or Platya, says Rashi, Shtein Rosh Hashanah. They're both different types of public thoroughfares. What is a Rosh Hashanah? Sratya or Platya? Explains Rashi. Sratya is derech chiluch b'nei adam, like a highway, a main street. Platya is a rochayv l'shvakim, a plaza for a market area. Ve'echad shnei roshin v'fuloshin shesarabim. So only when the alleyways, both ends, are exposed to Rishus Rabim, who the Palik Chananya Amabalag Delis. It is over there that Chananya disagrees and says, a doorway is not enough, you need to make a door. But if the alleyway is ending at a bika, this valley with fields, Carmelisi, Visur Rabbanno. So this area is not Rishus Rabim. Therefore, no door is required. Again, the point of a door is shut out traffic. But if it's ending, at least on one side, to an untraveled area, a bika, which is not being accessed by the rabbim, so this alleyway is not really serving as an access route to anywhere, and therefore, merely a Tzuras Pesach is enough to create that enclosure. You don't need doors. Continues the Gemara, just on the wording of Rabbi Yehuda, we have some difficulty. Because hashta srati mekan ubika mekan oisle Tzuras Pesach. You've told me that this is a line from the bottom. Now you just told me hashta srati mekan ubika mekan. You told me when there's a door, when there's a stratia, a street on one side, and a bik on the other. So although the alleyway is actually adjoining a Rishus Rabim, you said there's no concern. He merely places a Tzuras Pesach on one side, and adds a Lechem Vikar on the other side. So door is not necessary, although he's adjoining a Rishus Rabim at least on one side. Bika Mikan, or Bika Mikan, do you need to teach me that if on both sides there is merely a bika, which is not a Rishus Rabim, do you need to tell me that there as well you don't need a door? Isn't that pashut self-evident from the former halacha? So why does Rabbi Yehuda Rav need to elaborate, to articulate this halacha as well? It's already self-understood from the previous halacha. Says this is what he's saying. Srati mekan, a bika mekan, if you have an alleyway, which ends at a door at a street on one side, and a bika on the other side, so since there's no traffic really going through this alleyway, it's not serving the Rishus Rabim, that is the reason why you don't need a door. Nasa bika mekan. It is as though there's a bika on either side. Meaning, the point here is that the alleyway is not serving the pedestrians. So it's as though it would be surrounded on all sides with fields. Despite the fact that here it's actually touching Rishus Rabim, there's no concern because the point of a door is to prevent traffic. There's no traffic coming through it. So that's the point that he's making. When you have a street on one side, it is as though there's a bika there, as though it's a field. As far as the Mavi is concerned, he's unaffected by the Rishus Rabim running alongside, provided the other side is open to an untraveled area. So that was the first halacha that Rabbi Yosef related in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. U'Mesayim ba mishmei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef added another halacha named Rabbi Yehuda as follows: Im haya mavi kalal rechava, ein yitzarech klum. So the mavi, which was leading into a rechava, doesn't need anything, meaning we consider it to be a mavi sasim. What is the story here? Let's take a look at the diagram in the left corner here in Rashi, the bottom left corner. So we have the Rishus Rabim running on the left side. We have an alleyway which begins at the left side and extends towards the right into a rechava, which is an enclosed area. Rashi describes this as being like a backyard. And it seems that in those days it wasn't really something which was very much used. It was considered to be a non-residential area. So this is an enclosed area. Now this rechava had a breach. Its wall was broken open. See on the right side, it was broken open to the Rishus Rabim, which is running alongside it. So Rav Yehuda tells us that if the mavi is kol al rechava, it's ending at this rechava, which is an enclosed area, ain't tzarech klum. This mavi is regarded like a mavi sasam. Why? Although there's a opening, there's a breach at the wall of the rechava to Rishus Rabim, but it's irrelevant to the mavi. The alleyway here is ending in the rechava, which is an enclosed area. The rechava on its own is enclosed, because although there's a breach between the rechava and Rishus Rabim, but we're speaking about a breach which is either 10 amos or less, in which case it's regarded like a doorway, like an entranceway to the rechava. So the rechava itself is still halachically considered to be fully surrounded and enclosed. Now the mavi, which is entering this rechava, he's unaffected by that breach, because he's entering an enclosed area. It's not like an alleyway which is leading from one Rishus Rabim to the other. He's going to rechava, which is an enclosed area. So we regard this mavi as a mavi sasam and not as a mavi mefulish. Let's just see the words again. It's realized in the bottom. So Rav Yosef concluded another halacha named Rav Yehuda, Im haya mavi kol l'rchava. If the mavi led into a rechava, which is this enclosed area, ein tzarach klum. There's no need to add Itzuris HaPesach or door to this mavi. It's treated like a mavi sasam, because it's entering an enclosed area. It's not leading directly into Rishus Rabbim. Now Rashi points out the fact that he is describing the mavi as entering a rechava, which is an unused area. Apparently, this implies that if it would have been, let's say, a chutzner, a courtyard, which is generally used, a front yard, which is used as an access area to the home, it's considered to be a makam dira, makam of diurim, then there will be another concern due to the fact that we're missing Eruv Chatzeris. So Eruv Chatzeris is joining together all the members, residents of this jointly used courtyard, joining them, merging them into one residence, so to speak, by collecting bread and making them into one residence, into one dira, one usage. Otherwise, you can't carry this publicly used area. This is a din d'Rabbanan. We're concerned that if one carries, for instance, from his home, which is his private area, to the courtyard, which is a publicly used area, this might lead to confusion and may lead one to carry from Rosh Hashanah to Rishus Rabbim. Therefore, they required them to make an Eruv Chatzeris, as we're going to learn by the Hashem in the Masech. So an Eruv Chatzeris needs to be established between the people of the Mavi and the people of the Chatzer. If it would have been a Chatzer, which is an area which is used, which is frequented by the people of the Batim. So this would not allow, if there would be no Eruv Chatzeris, one could not carry in this Mavi. So the only reason why there's no concern here, explains Rashi, because it's a Rechava. It's not an area which is well used. It's not a Malkam Dira. It's not considered to be a residential area. And therefore no Eruv is required between that area and the Mavi, and one can carry throughout the Mavi even without an Eruv. So in conclusion, Rashi says, it's pretty clear, it appears, that Rav Yehuda holds that this Mavi is not a Mavi Mefulish. Again, the point is because he's entering a Rechava, he's not accessing a Rishus Rabbim. Only on one side he enters Rishus Rabbim, but on the other side he's entering a Rechava, which is an enclosed area. So there's no structural concern here, there's no Mavi Mefulish. But, theoretically, Eruv can pose a concern. So if there are the Urim here, if there are residents here, if it's a Chatzer rather than a Rechava, then if there would be no Eruv, this would pose a concern, would not allow carrying the Mavi. Continues the Gemara. Amalei Abaye Rav Yosef. Abaye told Rav Yosef as follows: Had Rav Yehuda the Shmoli. Apparently, this halacha of the Mavi, which is Kol Ruchava, that you're quoting from Rav Yehuda, apparently it is being said in the name of Shmuel. Meaning Rav Yehuda, we know, had two teachers, Rav and Shmuel. Apparently, this halacha was learned from Shmuel, who holds that this Mavi is not considered Mefulish. He holds that there would be theoretically a concern of Eruv that needs to be made here. It's Shmuel's Shita, because it's incompatible with Rav. The Rav. Because if this halacha would be attributed to Rav, it would be very difficult. Kasha de Rav betarti. There would be a contradiction, a stira, between this Rav and another halacha in the name of Rav, on two accounts. So there's another halacha in the name of Rav which seems to be diametrically opposed to this halacha. In the other Rav, we seem to learn that a Mavi, which has this configuration, is considered a Mavi Mefulish. So he has a structural concern here. It's a Mavi Mefulish. In addition, Rav doesn't seem to be concerned about the requirement of Eruv in such a situation. In contrast with this halacha, which appears to be Shmuel's halacha, who tells us this Mavi is not Mefulish, number one. Number two, he says, there is a requirement to make an Eruv if there are residents in this area. So it would be a kasha from one Rav to the other, if indeed the first halacha would be in Rav's name. So apparently it's actually Shmuel, therefore there's no stira. Which halacha of Rav are we referring to? The Amar of Yirmiyah Ba'abba Marav. Mavi shenifers b'maloy lechatzer. We have an alleyway which begins at a Rishus Rabbim and carries on till it gets to a chatzer, this courtyard, which is heavily used. It's a makam dira, a residential area. And the Mavi is completely exposed, open to that chatzer. So there's no door or anything which is blocking that entranceway. It's completely porous to the chatzer. Then if it's a chatzer connected, and the chatzer, the courtyard here, also was breached. The wall, which is opposite the Mavi, so the Mavi is entering the chatzer, and the opposite wall was breached to Rishus Rabbim. So this is very similar to the first story, except that here we're speaking about a chatzer instead of a rechava. Rav tells us, Chatzer muteres, umavi asur. One can carry in the Chatzer, but he cannot carry in the mavi. Says, well, why? What's wrong with carrying this mavi? V'amai, li'ahavi kim mavi shekal l'ruchava. Why is this different than the halacha of the mavi, which ends at that ruchava, which was discussed earlier? In which case, we consider this mavi as a mavi sasam. There's no need to add anything to it. Why does Rav say that this mavi is considered a mavi mefulish, and one cannot use it unless he adds a tzuras Pesach, for instance? Why? Why does Rav regard this as a mavi mefulish? Due to the fact that it's leading into a chatzah which was breached in Shusarabim, as opposed to in the first halacha of the mavi, which is ending at the rechava, we don't regard that mavi as a mavi mefulish. So we have a contradiction between the first halacha and the second halacha. In the second halacha, Rav regards this as a mefulish. In the first halacha, we don't. The second contradiction is, Rashi points out, that it seems from Rav that there's no concern of Eruv, because Rav is speaking about a chatzar, which is a residential area, and he seems to be telling us that the only concern here is a structural concern. The fact that the chatzar experienced that breach, which makes the mavi into a mavi mefulish, that is the problem, that is the concern. But otherwise, if there was no pirza from the chatzar to Shusarabim, in which case the mavi would not be considered an exposed and open mavi, would not consider mavi mefulish, there would be no structural concern here, then there would be no requirement to make an error for whatever reason. Which is in contrast to the halacha we learned earlier, that there is an error of concern. So we seem to have a double stira between both halachas. Apparently, the first halacha is in the name of Shmuel, who holds that the mavi is considered a mavi sasam because it's entering an enclosed area. That's number one. In contrast with Rav, who considers it a mavi foolish. And number two, Shmuel is concerned about the requirement to make erev chatzeris, whereas Rav is not concerned. So that's the teres. The first halacha is the name of Shmuel, and the second halacha is the name of Rav. So this is all Abayi speaking to Rav Yosef. Apparently, that's the way we meant to configure these halachas. The first one, name of Shmuel, and the second one is Rav. Amalei, so Rav Yosef responded, Analei Yadana. I don't really know who Rav Yehuda was quoting. Was it Rav, was it Shmuel? I'm not sure. I just know a story. Uvda Hava, there was a story, Bedura, the Reusa in this town of shepherds, with a mavi shekal l'ruchava hava. So you had the mavi which is entering the ruchava. V'asl coming to Rav Yehuda, he came to Rav Yehuda, he didn't require him to add anything to it, meaning it was sufficient to have a lechi, a kura at the entranceway to Shusarabim. He regarded it as a mavi sasim. That's the story I know. I'm not sure where Rav Yehuda learned it from, whether it was Shmuel or Rav. Now, if it's difficult to attribute it to Rav, because it will pose a kasha, a stira, maybe Shmei to Shmuel, okay, let it be attributed to Shmuel. But the kasha midi and nothing will be difficult. Continues the Gemara, actually, there was no kasha. Why? Hasha now, the Amalei Rav Sheshes, Rav Shmuel Ba'aba. Rav Sheshes explained to Shmuel Ba'aba, but Amalei, some say it was the Rav Yosef Ba'aba. So Rav Sheshes explained as follows. I'm going to explain to you what I myself heard from Rav, who explained to me this halacha. It's a misconception. Rav was not concerned with mavi mefulish. This alleyway which ends in the chatzar or in the rechava is considered a mavi sasam because it's not stretching from one Rosh Hashanah to the other. Despite the fact that there's a pirza in the wall of that chatzar to Rosh Hashanah, that doesn't affect, it's irrelevant to the status of the mavi who is merely ending at a rechava which is an enclosed area. So Rav was never concerned with mavi mefulish. Rather, the only concern was erev. I'll explain to you. Kan she'irvu, kan sh'lo. It simply depends on whether there was an erev which was established between the members of the chatzar and the members of the mavi, which allows carrying the mavi. Kan she'lo. In a case where there was no erev conducted between them, then one cannot carry the mavi. So that's the pshat in Rav. When Rav tells us that the mavi, which was nifratz l'chatzar, this allows carrying the mavi, was not on account of the fact that he regarded it as a mavi mefulish. Certainly not. It was simply due to an erev concern, and since it was fully exposed to a chatzar, which is a residential area, without an erev, you can't carry the mavi. If so, based on this understanding, that it's completely based on merely the concept of erev, unrelated to a structural concern of mavi mefulish, now let's go back to our apparent contradiction. The Rav Namele Kasha, the two halachas, even if they're both attributed to Rav, the story with the chatzar, the story with the rechav, are both attributed to Rav, will be no kasha to begin with. You know why? kan she'irvu b'nei chatzer b'nei mavi. Here it's speaking where there was an eruv established between the residents of the chatzer with the residents of the mavi, which allows carrying the mavi. Kan she'lo yirvu. In a case where there was no eruv, then you cannot carry in the mavi. So the case of Rav number 2 was where there was no eruv between the bnei chatzer and the bnei mavi. Therefore, one cannot carry in the mavi. Whereas case number 1 did not require an eruv because it was a rechav, as Rashi explained to us earlier. A rechav is not a residential area that requires an eruv. So there was no eruv lacking. And therefore, there was no reason not to carry in the mavi. So in summary, the point here is nothing to do with mavi mefullash. Rav certainly holds that this alleyway, which extends into an enclosed area, and only has one of its sides open to Shusarabim, that's considered to be a mavi sasim. Despite the fact that that enclosed area has its own problems, its own periods of Shusarabim. That doesn't affect the status of the mavi. The concern is merely an eruv concern. So where you need an eruv, then lacking that eruv would prohibit carrying the mavi. Where no eruv is necessary. So, for instance, in the first case, where the mavi was entering a non-residential area where an eruv is not necessary, then one can carry the mavi without any concern. Let's take a look at Rashi on the bottom, 3 lines from the bottom here. So Zayin base 3 lines from the bottom, the Rav namely tikshi. Kalaimar. This is what he means to say, Mahashta metzinu l'meimar. So now that we have this new crystal clear understanding of Rav, so now we can say to Rabbi Yehuda, Bedur Derusa, Karav Avdur, that this story, where Rabbi Yehuda ruled in this town of the shepherds, that the mavi which ended at the rechava was perfectly suitable for carrying, he followed Rav. Kedamrinan, as we said, kan she'irvu, kan shle'irvu. Depends whether or not an eruv was established. U'brechava like a diyurin. In rechava there are no residents. It's not a heavily used area, mavi, to go ahead and prohibit carrying the mavi, meaning there's no need to make an eruv between the rechava and the mavi. So both halachas are Rav, and they're both very compatible with each other. Continues the Gemara. Let's go back a step. Now our initial approach to things was a bit different. We figured there was a contradiction, a stira, between halacha number 1, which apparently is Shmuel, and halacha number 2, which is Rav. They have 2 disputes, 2 things that they're disagreeing about. Right? There's a structural concern, whether or not we consider this mavi as a mavi mefullash due to the fact that it's leading into a rechava or chatzer, which is open to Shusarabim. Shmuel maintains it's a mavi mefullash. Shmuel maintains it's not a mavi mefullash. Rav says it is a mavi mefullash. And conversely, we have another machlekes, a residential machlekes. Shmuel holds that such a situation requires an eruv. Rav says no eruv requirement. They're 2 separate, unrelated machlekes. Now the Gemara is going to try to analyze for us what can be the understanding, the havana, the svara of those disagreements. What is it based on? It says the way we initially approach things, that there are 2 separate machlekes taking place between Rav and Shmuel. Bein she'irvu, whether in a case where there was an eruv established, so eruv is not a concern. The only concern is a structural concern, whether or not we regard this mavi as a mavi mefullash. Rav says it is, Shmuel says it's not. How do we explain that? Ubein shelei eruv pligi, and they also have machlekes when there was no eruv that was established. In which case, Rav says lacking an eruv doesn't do any harm, and Shmuel says an eruv is necessary. So 2 separate, independent disputes. How am I going to explain what is the reason for their respective shittas? Be'irvu b'may pligi, in the place where there was an eruv, so that poses no concern, but rather it's a structural question whether or not we consider this as a mavi mefullash. Rav says yes, Shmuel says no. When there was no eruv that was established, in which case that itself is a concern, according to Shmuel, and not a concern according to Rav. What is the basis of that machlekes? What are their svaras? Explains the Gemara. When there was no eruv established, and the machlekes is whether or not that harms things, whether or not that results in a issa to carry the mavi. According to Shmuel, yes. According to Rav, no. What is the basis of that machlekes? It is based on the concept of a partial separation. Let's say there's a separating factor, which is only visible on one side of the separation. It's nira b'chutz. The separation is visible on the outside of the mavi, but on the inside, it's clear, it's smooth. There's no visible separation, such as in the case where the mavi was broken open, breached to the chatzar, and as far as the mavi is concerned, he's totally open, exposed to the chatzar. But if you take a look at the chatzar's side of things, if you're standing in the chatzar and taking a look at the mavi who's entering the chatzar somewhere in the middle of his wall, of the wall of the chatzar, so you have something that appears like an entranceway. It's not completely breached and open, but the chatzar still has walls on either side of where that mavi enters the chatzar. So the point of entry here is surrounded by walls of the chatzar. So as far as the chatzar is concerned, there's some separation between these two entities. As far as the mavi is concerned, there's no separation. That's the question. Do we apply the separating factor which is visible on the chatzar's end of things? Do we apply that to the mavi as well? Can the mavi benefit from that separation? And therefore, this would eliminate the need to make an Eruv. One can carry the mavi despite the absence of an Eruv, because there's no need for an Eruv when they're two separate entities. So that would be the point of machlekes between Rav, who says there's no Eruv necessary because this separating factor, which is visible on the chatzar's end of things, is sufficient to be applied to mavi as well. According to Shmuel, it's not enough because we don't see it from within the mavi. When you stand in the mavi, it looks clear and open. There's nothing separating the mavi from the chatzar. Therefore, an Eruv is required. So this will be the point of the machlekes between Rav and Shmuel. Benir b'chutz, when the separation is visible on the outside, meaning from the mavi side, v'shavim ifnim, but it's equal, the wall is smooth from within the mavi. So that will be the basis of that machlekes. Proceeds the Gemara. What about the other machlekes? The structural discussion whether this mavi is regarded as a exposed mavi, a mavi mefulish or not. Rav says yes, Shmuel says no. What will be the machlekes? Be'eruv kamiflagi, when there was an Eruv, in which case the lack of Eruv posed no concern. There is an Eruv. The concern is merely whether or not this is a mavi mefulish and requires something more than just a simple lecha b'ker. Rav says yes, Shmuel says no. What will be the basis of their machlekes? Says the Gemara b'd Rav Yosef. It's based on the following halacha that Rav Yosef taught us. Dam Rav Yosef, lo yishanu ela shekala le'emtze rechava. This that we say that the mavi, which is entering the, for instance, the rechava, is not considered a mavi mefulish. That's only if it conforms to certain guidelines. It's entering the rechava somewhere in the middle of the rechava, meaning, as we said, when you look at it from the rechava side of things, the point of entry is somewhere in the middle of a wall. So you have walls on either side. Aval kol the rechava, but if this alleyway is entering the rechava on its side, meaning that it just attaches itself to the side of the rechava, and it appears like one continuous wall. In this case, it's asur. Certainly, the mavi would be considered in this case as a mavi foolish because it appears like one big entity. The alleyway is simply continuing into the rechava, and since the rechava is open to Shesarabim, we regard this mavi as though it's fully exposed to Shesarabim as well. This allowance, according to Rav Yosef, is only when the entry point of the mavi is somewhere in the middle, but not on its side. Because if it's in the middle, then the two things appear like two separate entities. There's the mavi, and then there's the rechava. So although the rechava is open to Shesarabim, but the mavi isn't. And therefore, the mavi is not a mavi mefulish. But if it's off to the side, in which case it looks like one continuous wall, one continuous entity, it looks like one long alleyway, that mavi is a mavi mefulish. Explains Rashi, so the Gemara initially figured that this exact point was the machlekes between Shmuel, who maintained that since the mavi is entering the emsa of the rechava, we don't regard it as a mavi mefulish. As opposed to Rav, who maintained, nevertheless, since when one is standing inside the mavi, what is he seeing? He sees straight through the rechava to Shesarabim, due to the breach, the pirza, present in the wall of the rechava, which is directly facing the mavi. So in either direction, he sees the Shesarabim. In addition to the fact that the mavi is actually being used as an access route from the Shesarabim on one side, through the mavi, over to Shesarabim on the other side. Therefore, Rav maintained it's considered a mavi mefulish. But in reality, the Gemara concluded all agree it's a mavi sasam. Why? Because actually the pirza which was present in the rechava was not directly facing the mavi. So when one is standing in the mavi, Shesarabim is not visible, and therefore it's considered a mavi sasam, as the Gemara will tell us. Amar Rabba, Hada Amris le'emtze rechava mutar. This that we say that when the mavi is entering the midpoint of the rechava is considered a mavi sasam. Lo yamar. This is only said elad zesh lo keneged zeh. That's only if the breach in the wall of the rechava to Rishus Ram is not directly facing the Mavi, in which case the Rishus Ram is not visible from the Mavi. But if it's directly facing the Mavi, in which case the Rishus Ram is visible for one who is standing in the Mavi, it is Asur because it's considered a Mavi Mefulish. So you have two conditions so far. Number one, the Mavi needs to enter the midpoint of the Rechava. Number two, the hole in the wall of the Rechava cannot be directly opposite the Mavi. Another condition. This is what we just said. That the breach, which is in the Rechava, if it is not directly facing the Mavi, then the Mavi is mutter. Lo yamar, and this is only said El Rechava de Rabbim. If the Rechava belongs to the multitudes, in which case we're not concerned about them rebuilding, reconfiguring the Rechava. Therefore, when the Mavi is entering the Emtz of the Rechava, we assume it's going to stay that way. But if the Rechava belongs to an individual, where is concerned that he might go ahead and redevelop this Rechava and build some houses, perhaps he's going to redevelop this Rechava and decide to build some houses. The Milchala will have second thoughts. He'll redesign the Rechava, and he'll add some houses in the Rechava. What's going to happen then? Perhaps he's going to build up one side of the Rechava, which will result in buildings and walls, and the Mavi will actually will appear to be entering the side of the Rechava, meaning there'll be one continuous wall going from the Mavi through the Rechava all the way to the other side, in which case it loses its status as Mavi Kala enter Rechava, is no longer considered to be entering the middle of the Rechava, rather it's considered entering the side of the Rechava, which we consider the Mavi and the Rechava as one continuous entity. And it's considered to be a Mavi Mefulish. So Zimna the Milchala Uban Labatim Vahavale Kemavi Shekala Letzida Rechava Asar, in which case it is as though the Mavi is entering the side of the Rechava, and it looks like one continuous entity. It looks like a Mavi Mefulish, and it's Asar. So in conclusion, three conditions must be met for us to consider this Mavi as Mavi Sasin. Number one, it needs to enter the midpoint of the Rechava, in which case it doesn't look like one continuous entity with the Rechava. Number two, the Rechava belongs to the Rabbim. There's no concern that they're going to reconfigure the Rechava. And number three, the breach in the wall of the Rechava is not directly facing the Mavi. And of course, where there's a need to make an Erev Chatzeris with the Chatzar, of course that needs to be established prior to allowing carrying in the Mavi. Okay, time for a brief Chazara of today's daf. The Gemara began by telling us one can adopt a Chumrah of one Shita, a Chumrah of another Shita, provided that these two Chumras aloi sasri adadi, they don't contradict each other. We proceeded learning about a Mavi, that you're a typical Mavi Mefulish, which Beis Hillel require a door to be affixed on one side, is a Mavi which is stretching from a street to a street, from a plaza to a plaza. But if it's stretching from a street to a valley, a field area in which the public is not accessing the alleyway to get to the field, or certainly if it's coming from one bikah to the other, since it's not serving as a public access route, all agree that a Susa Pesach affixed to one side will be sufficient, of course, in addition to your standard Lecha and Kara on the other side. The Gemara also told us that a Mavi which is Kolal Rechava ending at a square, or it is open to a Chatzar, that Mavi is considered to be a Mavi Sasim, provided the entry point is at the midpoint of that Rechava. The Rechava belongs to an individual, and the breach which is present at the wall, which is opposite the Mavi, is not directly opposite the Mavi. The Gemara concluded that in a case where an Erev Chatzeris is required, for instance, if it's ending at a Chatzar, you must make an error between the Chatzar and the Mavi to allow carrying within the Mavi.